The Netflix-Warner Brothers merger might kill Hollywood, and here's why. In the 1980s, almost everything Americans watched was controlled by more than 50 different companies. Today, that number has shrunk to fewer than 10 giant corporations. Now imagine what happens if one of the biggest streaming companies buys one of the biggest movie studios for $83 billion. That's not just a business deal. That's more power being concentrated into fewer hands. When fewer companies control what you watch, three things usually happen. Subscription prices go up, creative freedom goes down, and the entire way Hollywood works begins to change. In a press statement from December 5, 2025, Netflix openly said they are committed to maximizing shareholder revenue. That matters because if Netflix gains access to Warner Brothers' massive content library, it puts them in a perfect position to raise prices, push more ads, experiment with new payment models, all in the name of keeping shareholders happy. And this isn't the first time Netflix has played this game. But what's different now is the scale. This time, the cost may not just be paid by studios, but by Hollywood itself and everyone who creates inside it. Netflix's CEO, Ted Sarandos, has openly said that the movie theater model is outdated. And that tells you a lot. Because if theaters are outdated, then it's in Netflix's best interest to release new movies on its own platform first, not in cinemas. That could mean shorter theater runs for new films, or movies skipping theaters altogether. And that's a big problem. The entire traditional cinema system depends on movies staying in theaters long enough to make money. Change that timing, and theaters take massive losses. In response to these concerns, Netflix sent a letter to Warner Brothers Discovery stakeholders, saying they are 100% committed to releasing Warner Brothers films in the industry-standard theatrical window. In simple terms, they're saying, we promise to play by the old rules. But here's the catch. That hasn't been Netflix's usual business model. And while they may stick to traditional releases in the short term, it's hard to believe that Sarandos and his team won't eventually push Warner Brothers projects toward Netflix first, in one way or another. If that happens, traditional cinemas will feel the impact very quickly. Netflix also claims the merger would allow them to invest more money into original productions in the United States, meaning steadier work for film crews, editors, and post-production teams. Sounds good on paper, but at the same time, Netflix has told investors it plans to save $2 to $3 billion by the third year after the acquisition. And savings like that don't come from nowhere. Historically, when corporations promise cost savings, it usually means job cuts. Netflix would likely reduce staff, merge departments, and shrink teams, which directly hurts the same creative workforce they just promised stability to. So the question becomes, how do you promise a steadier workflow while planning billions of dollars in cuts? But this isn't the full cost of the merger. The biggest loss may actually be felt by you, the consumer, and it comes down to ownership. For decades, Warner Brothers Discovery has been one of the most physical, media-friendly studios in Hollywood. They have entire divisions dedicated to selling DVDs and Blu-rays after a movie's theatrical run. In other words, you could actually own the movies you love. Now compare that to Netflix. Netflix doesn't sell you movies. It leases them to you. You're allowed to watch a film only while your subscription is active and only while Netflix still owns the license. Once either of those ends, the movie is gone. You never owned it in the first place. And this is where things get uncomfortable. Netflix has no incentive to support physical media. In fact, physical ownership works against their business model, which means if Netflix controls Warner Brothers' catalog, it suddenly becomes very easy to shut down DVD and Blu-ray distribution, stop selling physical copies altogether, and in a year or two, you may not even be able to buy your favorite Warner Brothers movies anymore. You will only be allowed to stream them. Netflix has promised to continue theatrical releases, but notice what they haven't talked about at all: the physical media division. And when something this important goes unmentioned, you already know where that usually leads. In December 2025, a class action antitrust lawsuit was filed against Netflix by an HBO subscriber. The lawsuit claims that this merger would reduce competition in the streaming market, lead to higher prices, and give consumers fewer choices. By effectively removing HBO as a major, independent competitor, Netflix strongly disagreed. In a letter sent to Warner Bros. Discovery shareholders, urging them to reject Paramount Global's $108 billion hostile bid, Netflix defended the deal. They wrote that regulators would see the merger as pro-consumer, pro-innovation, pro-creator, and pro-competition. To support this, Netflix cited a TV viewing share study by Nielsen. According to that data, YouTube leads with 12.9% of total TV viewing. Disney follows with 11.4%. Netflix currently sits at 8%. Netflix argues that even after combining with HBO and HBO Max, their share would only rise to 9.2%, still below both YouTube and Disney. They also pointed out that if Paramount were to acquire Warner Bros. Instead, their combined share would jump to a much larger 14%. So from Netflix's point of view, this merger doesn't reduce competition. It prevents someone else from becoming even bigger. Which brings us to the real question. Are Netflix's numbers telling the full story? Or are they using the right data to argue the wrong conclusion? Let me know what you think in the comments. So the big question is this. If this merger actually goes through, what does the world look like in 3 to 5 years? On the positive side, Netflix could bring a huge amount of money into Hollywood. That could mean bigger budgets, bolder ideas, and projects that studios might otherwise be too scared to fund. But there's another possible future. Netflix could become even more expensive. They could push more Warner Brothers movies to become Netflix exclusives, even while officially promising to keep standard theatrical releases. That shift alone could quietly weaken traditional movie theaters over time. And one outcome feels almost unavoidable. Netflix has no real incentive to keep selling physical media, which means DVDs and Blu-rays from Warner Bros. Discovery could slowly disappear, replaced entirely by streaming licenses that you never truly own. So what do you think? Do you believe this merger helps Hollywood or slowly takes choice and ownership away from viewers? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this breakdown useful, consider liking and subscribing. Our goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support directly helps us make more videos like this.